Yeah.
All righty.
Isn't that cause the moment?
We ready to rock and roll?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We still have one more minute.
I have 2 seconds.
We go by this. We don't go by the clock on the wall. What's wrong? Oh, 7 p.m. All right. It's time to call this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for November the 19th to order. First item on the docket for tonight is approval of minutes from our last meeting. Any corrections, changes, motions?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor? The minutes were approved. Second item on the agenda is a blank page. Actually, it's we need to elect a new chairperson and co-chairperson. So we'll take nominations.
I nominate Ken for the chairperson.
Second.
Don't throw this at me again, are you?
Yep.
Okay. All right. All those in favor? I guess so.
Who was the second on that?
Tony. Okay, and then for co-chair, I'd like to nominate Mr. Pease again.
Second.
Is that okay? You good?
Yeah.
Good. All those in favor? All right, on to item number 3. This is a discussion item. This is to consider and act upon a request by Chris Haven to approve a revised landscape plan at or about 510 Clay Road. Eric?
Seems like our mic is technical build.
That's what you get for kicking it a while ago.
They're not beyond Rashad's control.
He keeps you underneath this thumb, huh?
It's not built for me over here. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Commissioners. As most of you are aware, we recently amended Section 3.06.02 landscape requirements of the UDO. Property owners now have the ability to request alternative compliance to landscape requirements. So this is a Vince Hagen Corporation. Vince Hagen Corporation, which recently received a site plan approval for the addition of the office building shown here in the highlighted section. It's located off of Clay Road, and he's asking for alternative compliance of the landscape requirements for his industrial property in order to reduce the amount of landscaping. The following are images of landscaping originally approved this past summer, followed by the alternative compliance landscape plan he's requesting. Here's the currently approved plan, and here's the amended one. Mostly what the applicant is wanting to remove is the extensive shrubbery that was going up against for parking lot screening behind the trees. It seems that he's maintained just about all the trees, exception of a couple areas. So the applicant has made an effort to keep the majority of the required plantings. The staff recommends approval of the revised landscape plan request for alternative compliance in section 3.06.02. That's all we have.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. Is that it?
Yes, yes, sir.
What basis under 3.0602 are other than just a reduction? I don't see anything in the UDO that allows just for a reduction unless you're substituting other materials that require less water.
I'll let Rashad.
There is I believe there's a portion in there that allows for if there's, let's say, compatibility concerns. If you go to abutting properties, you can propose something different than what would typically be required.
Right. And I fully agree with that, but I can't find it in the UDO.
In the most current one, because we just changed that. That was just changed maybe 2 weeks ago or so.
Oh, that's the reason that doesn't show up on it.
And what you were asking though, for industrial, the alternative compliance, it states for industrial zone properties, If the neighboring property, you know, has nothing or maybe has some, they only ask that you conform to that.
Correct.
So that's kind of what we held them to, and Flowers Building just to the south does have more or less the same sort of landscaping that they're.
Which I totally agree with, I just couldn't
Yeah.
locate it in the UDO.
We got it now.
Okay,
And we had to wait until it went all through council
okay.
before we made all those.
Well, then we need to get some current copies of the UDO sent over to us.
I can forward that, it's on the website, but I can forward that to you.
Just PDF.
Yeah, send a PDF if you don't mind. Okay, this is a discussion item and not really open to public discussion, but if there's anybody here that wants to approach and discuss it, you're more than welcome to. If you have anything to add, if not,
I'm Chris Hagan, and I don't have anything to add at this point.
okay, all right. I think it's pretty straightforward. Any comments or notes from the commissioners? Changes, questions?
I think this is why we approved the change in UDO, is to
Right.
pull off of this.
Exactly. Like I said, I just couldn't find it under the section. That's my question, is not
Yeah.
whether it was in there or not, but where it was at.
So, but for future reference, it'll be at the end of 3.06.02.
Okay.
It'll have its own page for alternative
So
compliance.
did you guys contact Mr. Hagan, or how did, he must be pretty on it to?
Oh yeah, he's been almost every meeting on these, for the landscaping.
Correct.
Well, what had happened is that during the summer, they had come forth to the city saying that they would like to expand their industrial site at an office building. So we worked with them on it. They adhered to everything, which is, you know, and I guess it started the trend of noticing how maybe overkill, so to speak, our landscaping requirements are for even industrial zone
So then we
properties.
modified the UDO, and then kind of he picked up on that and changed the landscaping before we put it out there.
Yes.
So in this case, is it just the industrial portion that would be, like other industrial sections, could they come forward with similar requests?
Variation request, yes.
They could, however, I mean, these two properties are almost the only ones with any landscaping.
Yeah, on that area.
I think they're pretty.
Any landscaping is a good thing over there. Okay, any other comments, questions? Entertain a motion then.
Motion for approval.
Second?
The motion by Mr. P, seconded by Mr. Overfer. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. All right, on to item number 4. This is a public hearing item. Hold a public hearing to consider and act upon a request by Richard Sheldon to approve a replat for the Sunnyvale Center addition to Phase 1 at or about southwest corner of US Highway 80 and South Collins Road, Highway 352. Mr. Jackson?
Chairman, Commission, the subject property is located within Sunnyvale Center. As you know, maybe a few months back, we replatted this property to allow for the development of the future site for Quick Trip. The applicant has returned with intentions to further develop the property, so they're getting things in line for that, and would need to replat this as, again, just to verify that the ring road is put into a property maintenance agreement and subdivided into its own individual lot so that it will be maintained as such. And lots will be revised as we continue to develop this site. So we will have to replat this again, but this is just in line with regard to moving forward with future development. Staff recommends approval, contingent to addressing any future staff comments. Pretty much everything has been addressed with regard to this plat proposal. Staff finds that this plat meets all the requirements of the subdivision ordinance.
Well, just one quick question, Director Jackson. How wide is, it's hard to see on this map, how wide are they taking this easement or this replat? I mean, is there room for future expansion? Is there shouldn't never be anything, I guess.
When you say wide, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell on here. I can see the new property line for the roads, and I can see the landscape easement for the roads, but I don't know how wide all that is.
The ring road itself, I believe, is like 30 feet. And on either side of the ring road, there's been a designation for the buffer, the 10-foot buffer. The intent is to have, of course, a long ring road, landscape buffer with a sidewalk to provide connectivity from lot to lot.
Any questions for Director Jackson or staff? All right, we'll now open the public portion of this meeting. Does the applicant wish to approach and speak? If so, state your name and address.
Good evening, my name is Larry Cates, 14800 Quorum Drive, Suite 200. I'm here representing Rick Sheldon tonight with the request for the replat. I don't have a presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Guess not.
Thank you.
This is pretty easy. All right. Entertain a motion then.
Motion for approval.
Then a motion by Mr. Keith, second by Ms. Mitchell. Sorry, I'm slow. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. We might get you out of here with the whole meeting.
I think so.
All right. Item number 5. This is a public hearing item. This is to amend the non-residential fence regulations and ordinance amending the town unified development ordinance 17-09, duly passed by the town council on March 26, 2018, as amended from time to time so as to review and amend section 3.06 zoning development regulations, specifically section 3.06.05 fence standards, as well as other associated sections. Mr. Eckler?
Yes, so Commissioners, once again, we have a proposed amendment to the Unified Development Code that was passed in April. So since then, staff and council have been amending several and customizing various sections of the EDO to be in harmony with the rural yet defined style of Sunnyvale. Today, staff has chosen to address non-commercial fencing regulations due to increasing inquiry by residents and local business owners. So right here you can see the current UDO regulations really only address residential fencing. It mentions in this section a couple times were non-residential fences, but mostly in certain isolated incidents such as industrial zoning having barbed wire or front yard fencing only be of a certain material. But it doesn't address to the extent that residential regulations address everything that an applicant would need. So here on this next slide, you can see I made a map showing all the various industrial or all the various non-residential fences around the south side of town. And you can't see it here on this slide, but it's in your packets. You can see the label of all the different heights broken down into the color-coded dots. But staff conducted research on fencing regulations using several Texas cities within and outside North Texas region. An analysis of the data showed that there is a wide range of allowances for heights and materials throughout the cities, but no common standard used. Codes range from being very restrictive on fence height to allowing relatively tall fences. Several cities even require fence requests to go through site planning approval. The next, here are some of the slides that were shown on the map and their locations and their sizes around town. You all probably recognize maybe some of these. And on this slide, this is our suggested revised standards. So the proposed amendment to non-residential fencing is only meant to address front yard fencing. Wrought iron will be the required material of use for non-residential developments that request approval of front yard fencing. And the maximum permitted height will be 8 feet. Public notice was provided, town's official newspaper, publication on October 31st, 2018. And given that this is a text amendment issued by the town, which does not specifically affect one property, written letters were not provided to property owners. Last, I'd like to say that staff does recommend maximum height for the front and rear yards to be 8 feet for non-residential properties. Staff feels that although other cities allow greater heights, there are currently no fences in town taller than 8 feet, except for just a few. Nor has there been any desire or request from residents or business owners for allowances taller than that. Only a few existing fences will become legal non-conforming with the passage of this ordinance, and said fences have been in existence for some time. All that being said, this is our recommendation.
Okay. We do have to open, and we will close the public hearing. Any comments by staff, questions?
Where are the current legal non-conforming fences?
Are you looking at your map, President?
Yeah.
I'll bring it up to the,
Oh, okay. Just curious.
yeah. So they're gonna basically be right here. This is along Dallas Water Utilities. There's a portion of their fencing for some reason goes up to like 9 feet. It starts to get real high. And I only saw that for about maybe 20 feet of fencing. There's also Fence Supply has a wrought iron front yard fence with a gate, and that's 8 feet. And then the last one is going to be over by the antique shops. They have barbed wire on the front yard fencing that, and on one portion where the gate site goes up to 8 feet. So those are the only ones that really went higher than that in the front.
Well, I do have some issues with limiting 8 feet, because that means if you have a gate, you can only be 8 foot tall, and you can't get a lot of vehicles through an 8 foot tall fence.
Yeah.
Plus, I've worked on several commercial projects where an 8 foot fence is fairly easy to scale. I'm fine with leaving it 8 foot, but I think we should be able to do like a variance or something to do a 10 foot or 12 foot high fence.
We can easily add, an exception that must go through site plan process.
If it's above 8 foot,
Yes.
that's fine. Well, what about?
What's the benefit of limiting how tall it goes?
There's-
I mean, unless someone wants to build a castle and they want to have like a,
Sometimes you don't want to see a fortress and have that fortress look. I mean, it depends on the aesthetics. I mean, if you want that along certain, you're talking general business, you're talking along Beltline, if somebody wants to put a
can we
non-residential.
make that part of, you said we can make that part of the site plan if they want something higher than 8 foot?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and that'll still be allowed. Somebody wants to do something.
Yeah, that's like Dallas. Dallas says, here's your maximum height fence.
Right.
Even on residential, it's 6 foot, but if you want 8 foot above, then you go in and.
Yeah, I
and
agree
get
with you. There might be a time in the future that someone wants a 10 foot fence and
it.
I
Right.
don't have to say no to them.
And that's fine.
Mhm.
And as far as the gate, we can note something similar to what we do in the state fencing, that it shall allow for at least emergency apparatus access.
That's 16 foot clearance, so you're not going to have a 16 foot tall gate, but you see a lot of gates that are 10, 12, 14 foot tall,
Right.
even the state residences.
Now, that's only if they're having something that they want to put.
Yeah, a clearance
Yeah.
bar.
But otherwise, it's just an 8 foot fence that's gonna have the gate.
Yeah, but you see, like, there'll be an arch, and then it'll be a
Oh,
the decorative
Those
come up.
ornamental.
If they want that, then yes. it would-
So could we also put something in there except for gates? Or would y'all think that would make a difference?
Well,
What I've
what is
seen.
the, sorry,
Oh.
what is the height of a fire engine that has, you
You have
know?
to have 16 foot clearance for
Okay.
emergency vehicles.
So for those properties that have that artificial bar that they put, it really limits the emergency vehicles onto their site, does it
No,
not?
because they should still be able to get,
Is
by code, if it's gone through any kind of permit or anything, you still have to clear 16 feet.
What if they've been there for a long time and, you know,
Fire truck.
those are
run
not,
over. Literally.
But do we have that issue?
I haven't seen any.
Because I mean, I think if we're talking about medicals, if we don't have that issue, then,
well,
but I think, like,
Yeah,
we're
I've
talking
seen,
about something like
yeah,
this.
see, that's
That's what
a
you're
wrought iron
saying.
fence. Now, of course, that's just laying up against.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about something
Yeah,
decorative.
exactly. I mean, it might start at 8 foot and go to 10 or 12 feet,
Right.
and then it might have an arch above it or something, but I don't know.
so,
I've only seen what you're talking about maybe once or twice in my lifetime where it was too short to get up. And of course, I pull a lot of big trailers and that type of thing. I just don't see it a whole lot. I don't know if it's worth.
No, I think we ought to make it, where they can request a
Yeah.
higher fence.
Yeah.
Subject to approval.
Yeah, subject to approval, yeah.
And then,
You make-
is there something in there that they have to describe the gate? Or how high the gate is, or anything like that?
You could do something very simple, like the gate may not be more than, 20,
what
must
we've done-
maintain the same height as fence and be no more than 20.
Well,
The
what-
gate
higher or
may- the
something.
gate may be taller, and like you said, shall not exceed a certain height. That certain height should be just limited to what would allow for emergency apparatus.
what would you call an arch? Something over a gate like this, or some technical name
It's just an
that
archway.
has welcome, or
Yeah.
double R bar, or whatever.
Right.
Whatever that name is, an arch that, it has to, be 16, at least 16 feet.
I know
I mean, if we wanted.
Isn't it governed underneath the fire code and not
An
the
awning? No, I
UDO?
don't think it would be an awning.
No, it's not an awning. It's just an entrance or
Yeah.
decorative.
Entrance.
I would think if you use terminology like the gate can be no higher than 20% than the fence. So if it's an 8-foot fence, that's what? 9, 8. If it's a 10-foot fence, it's 12 foot. And that way it's kind of consistent.
There's a uniform.
It's uniform. So like this gate that you showed, it's like, it's probably,
I feel comfortable with
That picture.
just
Yeah.
giving a specific number, 20 feet.
Yeah, I need to send it to you.
The only reason why I say that is if you have a 8-foot fence, or a 6-foot fence, and you say 20%, that still won't allow for that entry feature.
well, no more. Well, yeah, it's
I
true.
mean, if it's just a gate, I think we're,
But we're only talking about if they come for variance.
And
We're not talking about the all the way around.
if I could just add real quick, there's a lot of cities I looked at that have, little exceptions and there's their own special regulations, but most of them, the only thing that's uniform around is 50% visibility for all front yard fences.
Right.
And generally,
Did any of
They-
them exclude gates?
no, they didn't bring up gates because I kept looking for that and didn't see it. So the archways, I never saw that once in the cities I looked at. But there are always that one person that has a specific style that they like to do. So that could be something to take into consideration.
Well, to build the archway, would they get a permit?
Mhm.
Would the
And
town
that-
at that point determine it violates fire code, because you can't get a...
During that process, and that's why we haven't had that issue, because the building official usually reviews it with the fire chief or fire marshal, and they verify it.
So do we want to include that with the fence, or is that technically not considered with the fence?
The gate,
Yeah.
it is considered,
Sure, okay.
but have we limited someone's idea of a gate, being taller than the allowed height? No, because that's their, as long as it's reasonable, you have to have some
Because
kind of
I can
consensus.
think of a number of estate fence gates in Sunnyvale that are higher than 8 feet.
Right, right.
A number of them, not just, you can drive down Barnes Bridge and see 4 or 5,
And
and they're definitely more than 10 foot tall.
Right, and at times they have to be just to provide that access. But
Of course, the gate doesn't have to go all the way up to the top of the arch either. It could just be, you can have an 8-foot gate and have a 16-foot archway, which happens a lot out in West Texas.
that's, if you look at some of these pictures, you'll see at the gate entrance, they're a lot of these commercial developments aren't going to have that elaborate
Right.
entry. They're just going to have it.
Right. Look at the one that you saw, the gate there.
Yeah, this one right
But
here.
that's just leaning up against
It's
the,
detached and actually meant that business owner and actually not the tenant. And she said that the owner doesn't have any plans for
but
it.
that's for sale. It's been for sale for 20 years. But you can see if somebody made that, the sides are probably 6 to 7 foot tall. Time you get to the middle, you're going to be over the maximum height.
I'd like to just say 20 feet.
20 feet?
I mean, the max, you're talking about the gate entry, Or at least
I think
double.
you'd drop it down to 12 feet would be, if somebody has a 10-foot high and had a 12-foot gate at the top,
Well,
I
the
think you
gate,
need
the
20.
gate, the
The
gate
gate
itself is
height
going to
doesn't
be 8.
matter. The gate height doesn't matter as long as there's no bar above it.
Right, that's the thing.
Yeah, but using this as an example,
Yes.
say the fence on the side was 8 foot, that's a lot taller than 8 foot.
Don't you just say,
16.
don't you say this excludes the decorative gate? Just exclude the gate, because, I mean, if you're gonna put enough effort into the fence, an 8-foot fence, and put a nice decorative gate, it's not that, why don't we just exclude the gate? Let them choose what they want.
Most of them are decorative gates.
Yeah, nobody talks.
I just don't, I think we're in the weeds a little bit on.
We got maximum 8 feet, but then you need a site plan for taller, so that one would obviously require
Taller for
the
fences.
site plan. But then the arch, saying putting a 20-foot limit on the arch.
Seems crazy.
I don't think we need to go that far.
I don't either.
I think we're going overboard with the arch. I think the main thing, we're talking about fences here.
I know, I get it, I'm just trying to, excuse me, I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting into the weeds on some of this. I'd rather just, if 8 feet or double the 8 feet, 16.
Well, here again, we're not talking about the arches. I don't think you'll ever find a 16 foot gate. That would be huge.
No, we're talking about arch, right?
Yes, we're
So
talking about the
I
entry.
don't think we need to get into the arch.
Okay.
We're on the fence.
Okay, so we're
So
just,
forget the arch, just the fence.
just the fence, we're leaving.
Because the arch is going to come under building code anyhow.
Right,
It's going to have to meet 16
gotcha.
foot to clear.
Right.
So maximum of 8 feet, and if you want to decorate something slightly larger, you need a site plan. You can have a site-
If they're doing something that big on a commercial fence, they're probably gonna do a site plan anyway.
Oh, they're going to have to.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be a good sized development.
Okay, but some other question is,
But, I'm sorry, one more thing. We're not talking about just commercial. What you're showing here also has 8 foot for residential max.
We're not changing that though. That's where we administratively, we're looking at how can we keep it consistent? And then if a commercial developer wants to come in, now that we have the opportunity, we can just say, you have to go through the site plan process.
Rashad, do you recall what the limits are for the estate fences? Because they're different from,
It's 8 feet in the front. Now, we did talk about the gate, and I believe the gate was just saying it needs to have the ability to allow for emergency apparatus to come through. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly if there was a height mentioned. I
so it
just know.
shouldn't be, commercial shouldn't be shorter than what is allowed for estate fences.
Right. Again, this is just to keep pretty much everything consistent.
okay, my other question, wrought iron, is that standard?
That,
Typically, it is for commercial development. I mean, we have DWU right now, who's doing the updates from chain link to wrought iron.
So all these places that have chain link, if they decide to do something different, they have to go on. I mean, that's, and I don't know, that seems like a lot.
Again, this is just staff moving forward with some of the aesthetics.
Yeah, no, I hear you, I'm trying to figure out, it's like,
that
is
were
that
concerned.
Sunnyvale kind of putting a little bit of a, too much Sunnyvale spin on things?
most cities only don't allow chain link. And when I worked in Tyler, we
Don't
saw
allow
that.
any chain link?
Yeah,
Okay.
they don't,
Okay.
especially not in residential, but also across the board, I was seeing wrought iron pop up a lot, or wood, 50% visibility, and that's something that chain link, I mean, it does give you more than 50%, but in most cities didn't
So
want
wrought iron is the standard?
it. Yeah, yes, so
Typically, the only time you get an exception from wrought iron in other cities is when you're in industrial. And it's a storage area.
Okay. I just don't want these poor people that have like, on Clay Road, have.
Now, see, there again, something like that, something around a storage facility, it's going to be a 10-foot fence. Then they wouldn't put an 8-foot fence. So,
most of these, the chain links that I found in the industrial area, they would have barbed wire at the top and they'd be 7 foot minimum.
right.
I think that's the rule commercially is to do 7 feet at least.
Okay.
So.
Okay,
So, I guess we'll entertain a motion to approve with adding anything over 8 foot would require site plan approval. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Recommend approval with the
Okay.
With the addition that if they want something over 8 feet, then they have to have approval for it,
Site plan approval.
site plan.
And a second by Mrs. Burton. All those in favor? It passes. On to our last item on the agenda. This is also another public hearing item. Add a directional sign, residential type. And this is an ordinance amending the town unified development ordinance, ordinance 17-09, duly passed by the town council on March 26, 2018, as amended from time to time, so as to review and amend section 3.06 zoning development regulations, specifically section 3.06.01 sign regulations, as well as other associated sections. Mr. Angel.
Yes, Commissioners, this is another code amendment we're proposing due to a recent increase in unregulated signage in residential subdivisions. This is more reactive than proactive, as our fence regulations were. So in Stony Creek, particularly, we've been seeing a lot of directional signage pop up. The current UDO does not address signage for large subdivision amenities scattered throughout its boundaries. The UDO currently only addresses directional signage in non-residential terms, like a bank drive-through or a fast food drive-through. And with the uptick in development in Stony Creek, we've noted these new directional signs. Although, sorry, let me go to the first one. Here are some of the unpermitted signage that we've seen pop up. And although Stony Creek is the only subdivision with directional signs, staff feels that it would be in the town's best interest to go ahead and implement these regulations now for all current and future subdivisions. Here's a slide showing, sorry, excuse me. So this, I want to say that this does not include any model home signs, which we actually have a separate category for, nor does it include any of the development signs that advertise number of lots or how big the subdivision is. I went ahead and made some renderings of the dimensions of these signs, the various signs throughout the subdivision, and another map for you all stating where they're located. The only signs that I would feel that should be removed or changed would be these ones shown right here, because they're actually just advertisements. They're not really showing anybody where anything is. And they're all cluttered together in one area. So should the neighborhood choose to repurpose these signs, it can add directional arrows or put them strategically.
The lake.
Yeah, lakes.
Yes.
Curious about that.
Is there a problem with having allow these businesses to populate those lands that are available? Is there a reason why we wouldn't want to encourage that?
They are,
Go ahead.
It's a whole, they're excessive, that's why.
the problem is they're putting them up without any review from town staff. They're limited by the acreage that they have on their entire development, or however, if it's, let's say 90% of the development is built out, then these are no longer allowed, those type of advertisement. That's a development sign. What we're talking about is wayfinding signage that we would want to regulate and move forward with. The advertisements, after a certain point, as I noted, they're not necessary anymore.
They're not allowed.
Yeah, they're not allowed.
At what point is it not allowed?
90%. When 90% of lots have been sold in the subdivision, they're not
So
allowed.
until then, we would allow it? These
A
kind of signs?
certain number. Right now, the ones that he's shown have been in place since the beginning of the subdivision, so we wouldn't necessarily actively ask them to remove them, but we would ask them to try to repurpose them. That's why we're limiting to number of 10 signs, but wayfinding signage. Fishing pier, playgrounds, lakes, what is that advertising? I mean, they can see that as they drive.
That's what I was gonna say, you don't even need them
No.
because everything is right there.
It's right there.
And you can see it off of Collins.
Exactly,
Oh.
exactly.
If those amenities happen to be right there, you can see them, but if they're, that,
If it was gonna be another type What you're talking about, we're not preventing them from doing a development sign. Where we're having Spring Lake Estates coming soon, 50 lots. But
Lakes, playgrounds, and fishing piers.
Look how close they are to each other. I mean, look at the picture, it's like back to back to back to back. I mean, this is
I got a question.
excessive, it's junky.
If a developer has, if the place is built out and the developer is out, who's gonna take care of those? Is the HOA?
it's a HOA.
Yeah, so the ones in particular you're objecting to are the ones in red, right
Yes,
there around
yes, sir.
the
Yeah.
Stony Creek
There-
Community Center, and really, the others, these yellow along Stony Creek you
Mhm.
show and onto the new area, those really just popped up in the last month.
Yes, these are the most recent ones. These have kind of been a little bit later, and
Yeah.
I guess these have been here a while.
And that's what sparked our interest in saying we need to
Right,
address this before it gets out of hand.
right, and they did the directional really to,
Yeah.
I mean, we as a resident in there, we know where everything is, but it's really,
Mhm.
First of all, I applaud the fence and sign maps, they're phenomenal.
Thank you. I
I
like these.
wholeheartedly support whatever you say on this thing.
And I'd also like to say another reason besides these signs is that we've had a lot of developers putting out many development signs in Homestead and Stony Creek on every exit and entrance into the neighborhood. And our code says 1 per 50 acres. And so that would max out at just a few signs. And if we were to count all these like pier signs and playground, then it would be way over. So this is an attempt to add regulation to allow them to keep some of these signs while controlling it.
Are you saying the ones on Homestead is, because they have a sign at every entrance, is it good or bad?
It's not my call, but
Depends on you, but they're not regulated appropriately. Like those signs, they're kind of finding a gray area, and they're taking advantage of it. Like you said, the development signs is 1 per 50 acres. So you're limited to the number that you can have.
But you see, the example, the one in Homestead, they're built in certain stages, and one is up north, and the other one is south, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah, but the developer should understand what he's limited to. And we are tasked to make them aware of what they're limited to, and that's all we're trying to do here.
and I think that in Homestead, they will be able to have enough signs, permitted signs to cover most of their subdivision. It's just right now, they'll throw 3 of these massive signs at one entrance, and they'll put them so close to the road within the right-of-way in the visibility triangle, so it adds public safety problems, distraction to motorists, and it's a clutter. So that's another subject, but tonight we're just doing the regular directional.
Well, I mean, I like the idea that we're limiting at 10 per, and this does not count the development signs.
Yeah.
These are just directional signs. And then over 200 feet, you get 5 more additional signs. Because there is a development coming that would meet that criteria, I believe. The only thing that we don't have in here in all the sign criteria is the visibility triangle. And we need to get that in here.
Setback, they have a setback.
They have a setback, but that's not the same as the visibility triangle. Because a lot of people don't understand the visibility triangle in an intersection.
I don't think it's in the sign ordinance, but it is in the UDO.
It's in the UDO, but not the sign ordinance. So if you're reviewing a site plan, for instance, for drive-through,
Correct.
they know that, you need that stacking space beyond the window.
Correct, that's in the
And then it can't
UDO.
be within the site, the visibility triangle, but here it doesn't address that. And our building official actually brought that up about these signs, because in Homestead, they put one right at the corner of a little street.
But that's where the setbacks come in. It's supposed to be 15 feet away from the right-of-way. So
But you can still be 15 foot from the right of way on intersections and still be in the 25-foot visibility triangle. That's my point.
I got you.
Why did the code enforcement department not enforce the code then
We mean,
on the signs? If they are not meeting up, why do
Those
we have
signs-
enforcement code? Why did they not enforce it?
well, those signs were put up, and I can't necessarily say why it wasn't enforced at the time, but those signs, some of them were in place and they were refaced. So some of the Stony Creek residents may be able to tell me what was on those signs prior to. But once Stony Creek Boulevard was punched through, that's when we started noticing the additional signage and was like, we need to address this.
Is the visibility thing addressed in something else?
So
I don't think it should be a safety concern, because that's got to be addressed somewhere else, right?
it is.
It is a safety
Does it cover
concern.
the signs then?
What it amounts to is there, on each intersection is a visibility triangle, and if we're just talking about 15-foot setbacks, sometimes 15-foot setback would be here inside the visibility
That's
triangle.
suggested in the code, right?
They're saying
Yes. Yes.
They're saying it's in the code, but we're not addressing it here, referring to it.
So
We just add that and say it
Yeah.
shall not obstruct the visibility triangle. I would hate to add additional regulation.
No, we
No.
wouldn't, just to where it says, where does it say,
Placement setback, signs.
placement setback, just add, it cannot be in, within the visibility triangle as set forth in the UDO, or whatever section it is. This sometimes, where really this happens is like you'll have an intersection like this, it's at an angle, and then it becomes a real issue.
Yeah, no, I think this is, I think it's really well written, I think it makes complete sense, that's a good point about safety.
Yeah, because a lot of people plant trees right there, and a lot of cities require the trees on the road, and then they grow, and then you can't see.
Right.
So, or they put telephone poles right in the visibility triangle, and you can't see another car coming down the road. I just got ran over on, I got my granddaughter the other day. Here in Sunnyvale. Okay, entertain a motion. I think we beat this horse.
Move to approve with the change regarding adding the visibility triangle language or reference to the UDO coverage of that.
Yeah, right now, officially, I just say, it's the public. Do we do-
Yeah, we do have to open it to public. Now we'll close the public hearing. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Now,
Just to be legal.
remove. I will make a motion to approve this amendment and with the change that we discussed regarding having the reference to the UDO visibility triangle added.
It's been first and second, all those in favor? All right, thank you very much. We'll now close this meeting at 7:42.
Good point on the visibility, because I think the UDO, whoever